Welcome to Microphone Check with J and Q, where no topic is off limits. This honest and safe space was created for you to objectively evaluate the things in your life for the purpose of growth, healing, and success. I'm JB and he's Q. What's good with you, man?
What's good, brother? How you doing?
Keeping my head up, man. Keeping
Yes,
my
sir.
head
It's been a few weeks, but we're back at it.
Yes, we're back. Even in this time, Juneteenth became a holiday. I mean,
Yes, quite a few things has happened.
yeah. Shoot, Juneteenth became a holiday. There was another was a state was trying to block Juneteenth from becoming a state holiday. Was that Florida?
No. I think you're referring to the state of Georgia, where Governor Brian Kemp said that he's not going to allow it to be a federal holiday because the state already have the allotted federal holidays for time off for state workers.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. But and while we at it, then I know this is not part of the conversation,
but we're here.
But we're here now. I just don't want people to get lost in the traffic, right? Juneteenth did become a national holiday. Great, but we still must not forget that there's still bills with the Senate that need to be passed. Bills like the George Floyd Justice Act, and also the Voting Rights Act to restore and to block some of those voter rights, those voter rights suppression laws out there. So we can't forget that. We can't let that this one thing pacify us for just a moment and forget about the future. But I'm done. I'm on my soapbox.
Absolutely. That might be a podcast by itself. You know we can do it.
Yes, sir.
Cool. So here we are today talking about is the church still relevant in the 21st century?
Mm-hmm.
Is the church still relevant in the 21st century? I'll go ahead and start first with my opinion. You can start with your opinion, then we can go into the discussion. I have to say I'm biased in this, but in my biasness, I believe that I'm also objective in my viewpoint. So yes, as a pastor, I do believe that church is still relevant, but as a person, I still believe church is still relevant. Mm-hmm. The reason I believe it's still relevant is because what's not being discussed the most is the impacts of the church within the community. I believe a lot of focus is on the churches that do things wrong or the people within the church that do things wrong. But what's not being highlighted is the impact to churches that are doing things right in the community. And so and hence is the reason why we're having this discussion now, is because people don't understand that in your community, in the lives of people within the community, that church has a positive impact. Mm-hmm. We'll go into the discussion part about the views of judgment of churches and all this other stuff. And is it archaic? We'll talk about all that. But I think for me, just simply put, it's still relevant because of the impacts they make within the community. How about you, my man?
Yeah. I think I side with you 100%. I think that there's a lot of significance that we do have with the church. I think that the church has value. And I think a lot of people put more of the emphasis in the church memberships, and when I say the membership, I mean those people who actually attend the church. And that includes pastors for that matter, opposed to looking at church for what it really is, which should be like this temple for community. It should be like this place for spiritual and emotional healing. And I would even go as far as saying that it should also be a place where it can serve the needs of the people.
Yeah.
So I think that in its own right has been missed or has been subverted, if you will. But I don't think that applies to every church across America, if that makes sense. I think there are still churches out there who have value, who are doing the things that they need to do, who are meeting the needs of the community. And that right there, my friend, is what makes them still relevant in this 21st century. Now, the thing is, we need more people, we need more communities, we need more ministers, more preachers, more pastors to join this paddy wagon, if you will, to push the message that the church is a place where your needs can be met.
So is that your list of who's responsible for keeping the church relevant?
No, I don't think that's just the only people who should be responsible for keeping the church relevant in the 21st century, if you will. I think that role plays with everyone. I think the community is also responsible in making and continuing to make the church relevant. Because in my opinion, the church is only as strong as the community. What is the community sowing into the church, and vice versa? What's the church sowing into the community? I think it's a two-way street, right? I think that one hand washes the other. So if the church is meeting the needs of the community, and the community is meeting the needs of the church, I think they can both. I think they both are rather responsible with maintaining that relevancy now.
I agree. A lot of times, like I said, I'm a pastor. A lot of times, I feel or felt, I can't say with the church I'm pastoring now, but it's definitely in the past, I felt like the heavy responsibility of keeping the church relevant was on the pastor or the ministers, deacons, or whoever titled individuals. That's where the responsibility fell on.
Yeah.
For lay members, they didn't pick up that responsibility. So, or at least they didn't want to own that responsibility, or maybe they didn't even know that they were responsible for it. But it definitely felt like if you had that title within the church, you have to keep church relevant. I do feel, like you said, that it's everybody's responsibility. How that looks, and how they do that, that's determined on your personality, how God leads you as an individual to move and do that. It's definitely catered to the people. I don't think there's a blueprint to say this is how you as a person or everybody should go. You should figure out how God uses you to keep the church relevant. And when we say relevant, I mean relevant is it making it necessary? Is it relevant? Is it necessary? Is it still needed? And that's where I come from. Relevance, and it is everybody's responsibility to show the world, show the individuals that are close to them or they meet, that church is still necessary for them. And maybe the church has to define, look at it within themselves as local churches or whatever, has to say, what am I making are we making the church relevant? Like, will the church miss me if we're gone? Will the community miss us if we're gone? Will the lost and seeking miss us if we're gone? Will the hurt miss us when they're gone? When the sick miss us? Stuff like that. If your church closed today, but those that you serve in your community miss it.
Yeah. So I'm going to say something, and I know by saying that it may be a tad bit taboo, but I'm going to say it anyway. When we talk about the relevancy of the church, and when I look at that, because I look at the church as being a physical building, but I also look at the church as being the body of Christ, which means that I'm partial to go wherever because I carry the word in my heart. And so the church is literally within me. So I look at that in two folds. And I think both are in action, if you will. But as an example of the church leaving, and you do have those people hurting, or you have those people who become misguided. I look at, the education system, where you and I have both, well, maybe more me than you, because I think you did more of your education overseas somewhere.
Yeah.
But the education system that I come from, back in the late 80s, early 90s, where we did have religion in the school, where there was prayer in the school, you were able to talk about God in the school. And when we began to get away from that, there began to be a rise in like drug use, or at least, and I can always talk specific about my school. I can't talk about schools across America, right? But specifically in my community, I can see that there was a increase in drugs, alcohol use, sexual violence, violence in general, like all those things like skyrocketed rather, once we began to take Christ out of the school. So I think even in that example, when you say is the church still relevant, when you try to make church irrelevant in the education system, the evidence of that was there was a increase in crime in the school system.
Absolutely, and I guess the on a you know how we say we reverse engineer.
Mm-hmm.
let's reverse engineer. I think this is probably where we can come. Okay, so we're having a conversation about is church still relevant in the 21st century? Reverse engineering that is, what are the things that people believe make it irrelevant?
Mm-hmm.
And so let's talk about, and I guess in the Black community specifically, religion, at least when we talk about Christianity, right? So let's be specific about this. So
yes.
And when we say church, so let's start from the Black, African American, Black community, whatever you want to call it. This religion was forced upon us, so it's not relevant because this religion was forced on us by our slave owners.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you stand in that irrelevance?
Oh, so it's crazy you actually brought that up, because I literally just had a conversation over this weekend about that very subject, about Christianity being forced to Black people. And in some ways, I can understand where people are coming from when they say this, right? When they say that, hey, you know, coming from Africa, we had a different religion, whether you were practicing Islam or some people were practicing, you know, Buddhism or what have you. And those are all true statements, right? They were practicing those religions in those days, right? But I still cannot dismiss the fact that we are still connected to the Christian faith, even in that. And I think that when Christ came, we got into this new gospel setting, or this new what's the word I'm looking for? The establishment of the new church. So yeah, did we used to practice it? Yes, but that's why you have to be taught about the word, and you have to come into God, or come into Christ rather, in this newfound Christianity, because perhaps we were taught something one way, and the things that we were taught probably precede Christ. Now we have Christ here, or not necessarily here, but we have the coming of the Christ, and we have the birth of the Christianity movement, and we are here in this point in time. So yeah, I think that, yeah, we probably did come from a different religion. Some of us, I think that Christianity was around in Africa when some of our ancestors was taken from Africa, which is something that is not really being discussed. But I also think that even for those who were practicing Islam or Buddhism, when those ancestors that were in Africa, I think that they still had an opportunity to meet Christ, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, one of the other things to add in there is that, you know, you mentioned that Christianity was over there, like this is, but I've never seen, like specific text that said slave owners said, you know, to keep these people slaves, we need to make them Christians, and then we also tell you not to read. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, we want you to follow this Bible as Christians, but we don't want you to read. And so we're going to use this to say that, you know, to subject you to being a slave. It just logic doesn't flow with me in that one.
It doesn't. Even for those who say that, well, you know, Christianity was used to control the slaves. And when I think about that on the surface, I can say that perhaps Christianity in America was probably perhaps used to control the slaves, but Christianity in general was not.
That's a perspective. Yeah.
It was not. I mean, because if we go and we take the word for what it is, show me where in the Bible where it says that slave masters abuse your slaves and deprive them from their history and deprive them from their families and all this other stuff that happened during the slavery time. You're not going to find stuff like that in the Bible.
No, you're wrong. You won't. And I think that's one of the things that people sometimes use, right? Another thing, let's talk about. You started first last time, so I'll start first this time. I think people use church hurt as a thing that says church is irrelevant. Church is a place that that hurts people instead of heal people, or they do you wrong. So prior to us getting on, you said something that it was both right and wrong in the statement that we're talking about. We won't get into that conversation. So I think this applies to the church hurt, right? You're right, but you're wrong. You are right. Do people get hurt in church? Absolutely. I won't deny it. I won't try to dance around it. I'll be straightforward that church has hurt people. But I think at times you have to define what does hurt. How were you hurt? Was it because you were being held to, because you confessed Christ? Was it were you being held to Christian standards, and that was where the hurt was? Based on what the Bible says, the principles of the Bible, of Christian living or something like that. Because some people got hurt because of that, because they're like, well, you're judging me, but I'm using the text in the Bible to say that this is what the Bible says. But I do believe in that regard that maybe that's, you felt hurt by it, but that's not because of the church. That's because of your convictions. But I do believe that on the flip side, that yes, you can be hurt. Pastors have messed with somebody's wife, or sexual abuse with children, broken trust from leadership. So I believe that do happen, but sometimes, and I want to go and say most times, church hurt could be because the convictions you felt the convictions you had didn't feel good, and you didn't want to go abide by some of the standards of a Christian living brought to you by a denomination or church that has laid out their particular viewpoints and those things, and that caused some hurt. So that's where I kind of stand in that one.
No, I agree with that statement as well. We was talking, it immediately made me think about, and I'm not going to call out the name of this person, but it's a famous pastor and gospel artist, and I know that one of that person's thing is they do a lot of shaming in the LGBT community, and I think that is part of what people who are church hurt talk about when they say they're being church hurt. Don't get me wrong. I think that there is convictions rather that you must go through, but I don't think those convictions mean that you're supposed to be continuously shamed by people who are in well, I'm not even gonna say in a religious position. People who are churched all together. Yeah. We should be holding one another accountable, but not calling out one another flaws. We should be trying to cover one another's nakedness, if you will. I mean, we can even look at the example of what was his name, Shem and Japheth, when they walked in back to cover Noah's nakedness, right? They didn't want to expose their dad in a vulnerable position. When I look at that and I think about how you have religious leaders who use the power of the pulpit to propagate messages that we know are hurting people, and we're calling these people from going to the church, the places they need to be going to for the healing. We're pretty much outcasting or ostracizing them from going to the church by delivering these messages. Because I think don't get me wrong, I think that we should preach on things that are sinful, right? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that the church should get away from doing that. But I think that there is a fashion for doing everything. Yeah. If you are delivering a sermon and your sermon is not being delivered in love, then where's the Christ in it?
Right.
So I'm not going to call out. I don't put a questions on anyone calling. I think you and we talked about this before. I don't determine whether Christ are called or qualified. But if you are delivering a message and I don't see the love in your message, then I will begin to question that part. Where's the Christ in that message? Because that is a part of the church hurt. I think that we have a responsibility, whether you are in a pulpit or you are a Christian in general. You cannot go to someone and try to hurt them. You have to come to them in love. Now, I'm not saying don't be honest with them, because we should always be truthful, right? Yeah. And sometimes, as we talked about prior to this podcast, sometimes the truth does hurt.
Yeah.
Sometimes it hurts. But that doesn't mean that we should withhold the truth, but we should deliver that truth in love.
Right. And I think I'll say a subcategory to that. Church hurts. That's why they make it. Some people think it's irrelevant. The judgment, although it's a subcategory, that being judgmental should stand on its own, as a category. And you use the LGBTQ community. There's also various other communities that that grows judgment on. And we, like you said, we talked about it. We don't have a heaven or hell to put anybody in. And I do believe Scripture is both true that God judges people. Mm-hmm. And I do believe in the authority of the text that said these things are yay or nay. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That are wrong. But at the same time, for our responsibility is not to judge in that kind of sense of trying to put somebody to heaven and hell. Everybody has a redeeming factor towards mm-hmm. them. Everybody, unless God says otherwise, should be treated as such.
Yes.
Bringing anybody closer to God. And that timeline is not for us to make. So we can't say you can do it within a day. You can't do it. That's not our timeline. We, like you said, we do it in love. We share the gospel. We share the love of Christ with people, and that's where it is. But another thing as we move on and get close to the closing, from the reverse engineering side. So I also believe that people look at church now as just a money-based money-based organization. Like we just want money. And that, once again, I may fall into, sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not, right? I don't think all churches are like that. Like I said at the very beginning, a lot of times you hear about the bad that some churches do.
But you never hear about the good things.
And so some people hold on to that, like, I see this church that does this, that, and the other, that is just, they're all about money. And most times when you ask them, have you yourself went to a church like that? Many of them say no, but they heard that that's how churches are, Yeah. But it's like, but have you been in a church that way? Mm-hmm. No, I haven't. Okay, then maybe that's.
I can tell you that I am.
And like I said, there's times that it is true, and there's times that it's not. But because of the bad seems to carry more weight than the good. Some people could simply say, that's why churches are relevant, because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing anyway. You don't see them in the community. You don't see them in the hospitals. You don't see them in nursing homes. You don't see them providing and all this other stuff. So what's your take on that one?
So as I mentioned, I've definitely been in that situation where I've attended a church where, we're doing the tithe and offering. The tithe and offering is being funneled to the pastor and to his family, and they're driving these nice, expensive cars. The bills in the church are not being paid. The church counts accounts are negative. And you got people talking about, well, why are you still paying tithe and offering? Why are you continuing to pay into this church where you know that your money is not being used towards what it's supposed to be used for? And I almost fell into the hype, not even gonna lie. Because I was like, yeah, you're right. Why am I doing this? But then I had to remember that when I'm doing my tithe and offering, I'm not doing tithe and offering to this man. If I'm truly doing tithe and offering, if it's in my heart, then this is not something that I'm doing for whoever the pastor and the pastor family is, but this is something that I'm doing because of my connection, my relationship that I have with Christ.
Right.
So I'm doing it in good faith. So if I'm doing it in good faith, then I will reap the harvest of that. I ain't got nothing to do with what they're doing over there. They're going to be calling to account for it. Now, do I agree that it's wrong? Absolutely. Do I agree that they should probably have come under some kind of investigation? Probably so. But that is for them and the church officers to handle. But as for me, I'm going to continue to be obedient, and I'm going to continue to walk in that obedience, right? But yes, I do agree that people oftentimes, when they see those things, they look at the bad things and they start applying worldly views to something they should probably apply a spiritual aspect to, if that makes sense. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes in this moment, because we all do it from time to time. To include me, still sometimes I get that worldly view on things. But I think most of the time when we have people who are church hurt, they're looking at things through a worldly lens, and they have completely taken off their spiritual lens. And I think it was Devon Franklin, if I can use him for a moment, I am going to name drop him on this one because I'm going to quote something that he directly said. And I thought it was a great statement, by the way, when he said that, if you don't like a artist, that doesn't mean that you stop listening to rap altogether. You just stop listening to that one particular artist.
Yeah.
You're done with that artist. So why can't we have that same prescription when it comes to the church? If we don't like one particular church, why can't we just say, I won't go to that church, but I'm going to continue to walk in my faith. I'm going to continue to hold on to my Christianity, right? So I think it's all about switching that lens, if you will.
Right. But absolutely, I agree with that. So, one quick topic, we'll make it quick though, because I just came in my head. This is kind of, I want to get it in because, as COVID restrictions are gone away, practically everything now is pretty much a recommendation. I would say now, from a church building, physical building standpoint, that the relevance of that is becoming into question now. Church is accessible online. Even at my church, we do put it online. Do I necessarily need to have a building anymore? Does it need to be brick and mortar? Is the building church the Blockbuster of the past? And streaming services is now the Netflix of today. So now with churches opening, people maybe be apprehensive of coming back to the physical building, the congregation, the fellowship of the saints in one single location in that regard. So switching up a little bit, do you think the physical church is still relevant? The building?
So that's going to be both a yes and a no answer. Because I think it can be both. And to put some relevance to that, I think I start by saying that God can use anything. And I'm pretty sure that we both have heard that all our life, that he can use anything. And so I have to believe that in this technology advanced world that we're living in today, God using anything mean that if I have to reach the masses by way of streaming, then I'm going to use streaming service to do so. Because it's the next best thing that I can do, that I can reach a broader audience and get the message out to them. So why not? Now, I do think that there's still some relevance to the building as well. Um, for me, the building is like a temple, if you will. You just feel different when you go inside of the sanctuary. And I'm not saying that this is like a idol, if you will, right? Because I separate that from being an idol, because what I'm going into that building for is not to idolize the building, but for what I can get in that building with the community of believers that surrounds me. Absolutely. And I think that's what makes it relevant, is I'm surrounded by other believers. And as iron sharpen iron, so shall one man sharpen another. So I'm being sharpened by those people who are around me. Those people around me are making me accountable. Mm-hmm. And I'm holding them accountable as well, right? So I think that is what else that makes the brick and mortar relevant in this time and era. And I don't think that you can necessarily get that when you're streaming. Don't get me wrong, because there are people who will stream and they have their people or their family around them, right? Yeah. But as you know, though, there are some people that we have a religious respect for. And so I think when we are able to connect with those people that we have a religious respect for, I think that brings more of an emphasis to the brick and mortar opposed to the streaming services. But the streaming services are still good, because now we can reach people who are on the go, people who have to work on Sundays or whatever day that their church do their services. You got Bible study online now. People are literally, there's no excuse for saying that, hey, I don't have a right to choir rehearsal. When you can just get on Zoom now, you can do your choir rehearsal, right? There's no excuse for saying.
I've seen singing through Zoom and they're off because of delays and stuff like that. I don't know you want to do choir.
Okay, well, let's stay away from the choir rehearsal then. But what about Bible study?
Yeah, Bible study, we're good.
We got the Bible study. Yeah, so I mean, it's still good for those kind of things as well. I mean, do we really need to be in the physical building for Bible study? No. We can do it on the move now.
That's true.
I can tell you that when COVID first kicked off, and I'll be quick, I know that we're on a time crunch. My wife and I, we used to go walking and watch Bible study at the same time while we were walking.
Yeah.
We were just mobile Bible studying now.
Well, I for one, do appreciate you coming online to hear me preach when you normally wouldn't be able to because of the geographic distance that we have.
Yes, sir.
I do appreciate you coming online.
Absolutely, and I've enjoyed them too. I have enjoyed them.
Nice. So, in closing, I believe that I think like we're both kind of on the same page for this. Church is still relevant in the 21st century. I like what you said. If it's just the church that you're at that you feel that relevant, then go find another one. and you see, until you find one that's relevant, because they're out there. They are out there doing things within your community. Look for the good things that are being said about them. See how homeless are getting fed, the children are being taken care of, or schools that they're doing for schools. Nursing homes for those that may have been forgotten because they got older. Just think about that. Check it out and see what they're doing. Still preaching the word of God that will bless your soul and strengthen you up. So we challenge you to look at the local churches and see if there is one that could support you, and in turn, you can support them. It's a partnership. So you and church are a partnership, and you're a partnership for your community to meet those community needs, whether it's spiritual, professional, financial, lifestyles, whatever those needs may be. You and your church are a partnership of that, and it's definitely, certainly relevant. So thank you for listening to What's on Our Mind. Come join us next week as we discuss, should college be the preferred option for high school graduates. A lot of us experienced graduations recently across the nation. Who knows across the world? I don't know what other countries are doing with their graduations, but at least for our country, the United States, a lot of people have celebrated graduations for their high school seniors. And so let's talk about that. Maybe it's too late for those that have already graduated, but we may have other kids coming around that are graduating. Should college be the preferred option for high school graduates? This is Microphone Check with J and Q. Like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace, patience, power, and prosperity.